The Intergalactic Council was a coalition of the most advanced and powerful species in the galaxy. For a long time, they had sat at the top of the galactic hierarchy, accustomed to ruling over planets and civilizations they considered inferior. Humanity for them was an enigma, but also a species worthy of disdain. Earth was seen as an insignificant figure in the galactic arena, and humanity's efforts to sustain its own existence were regarded as a mild amusement by the council members. Occasionally, there were minor skirmishes between humans and the council. While humanity's resistance caught the council's attention, these conflicts were typically subdued with minimal force. However, in recent times, these minor crises had escalated into a significant threat. Humans had crossed the council's borders, established their own colonies, jeopardized trade routes, and challenged the council's authority. The council members, having long restrained their patience, had finally run out of it. In an emergency meeting, they debated that they could no longer ignore this threat. Confident in their advanced technology and numerical superiority, they decided to swiftly rein in the humans and restore galactic order. It was time to send a harsh warning to Earth, remind humans of their limits, and crush this rebellion. The Intergalactic Council prepared a detailed plan to completely break humanity's resistance. Their target was one of the most crucial military bases on Earth, a key point in human resistance due to its strategic location and defensive strength. The fall of this base would lead to the collapse of human defenses and the rapid end of any remaining resistance. The Council believed that by capturing this stronghold, they could force humanity into unconditional surrender, certain that this move would end the resistance entirely. The galaxy's most advanced fleet, equipped with sophisticated weaponry, was advancing towards the military base, confident in their victory. They had calculated that humans would not be able to withstand this powerful attack and that their defenses would crumble quickly. Council leaders, believing that all resistance points on Earth would rapidly surrender following this pressure, were simply waiting for the inevitable outcome. The Intergalactic Council sent an ultimatum to the most important military base on Earth, demanding their surrender. The message was written in harsh language, reminding humans of the Council's superiority and the futility of resistance. The Council members were exceedingly confident. They believed humans had no other option in the face of such overwhelming power. Surrender seemed almost certain. Some council leaders had even begun discussing how Earth would be reorganized and integrated into the galactic economy once humanity submitted. However, something unexpected happened after the message was sent. Silence. Complete and utter silence. There was no response, no reaction at all. Initially, this strange silence did not disturb the council members, but as time passed, the void began to grow into a growing sense of unease. They had expected humans to surrender without hesitation, but this silence hung in the air like a harbinger of uncertainty. The confident discussions among the council gave way to uneasy glances. The silence was far more unsettling than they had anticipated. Council commanders initially underestimated the lack of response, but as the silence prolonged, their astonishment grew. It was unexpected for humans to react this way to such a definitive call for surrender. While their plan should have gone off without a hitch, this uncertainty sent a ripple of discomfort through the ranks of the commanders. It was now clear that this situation wasn't just a matter of time. Something was amiss. To understand what lay behind this silence and to learn what was really happening, they decided to send a few experienced agents to the region. These agents were tasked with infiltrating the base and reporting back to the council. As the commanders waited for answers, they were both anxious and vigilant. This unusual situation was beginning to reveal that their plans were not as flawless as they had believed. Among the council officers, doubts began to grow as the silence prolonged. Initially, they perceived it as a simple delay or a minor logistical issue, but as time passed, the feeling that something else might be lurking behind this silence began to take root. While anxiety spread among the officers, the council leaders still believed their plan was flawless. To them, humans were too weak and disorganized to resist such overwhelming power. They thought the silence was due to internal disputes or chaos among humans who were trying to sort things out. However, when the silence lasted longer than expected, even the leaders began to ask themselves a question. Were humans truly unafraid? Or was this silence, in fact, a form of defiance? As doubts continued to spread among the officers, this possibility started to infiltrate the minds of the council leaders as well. What they had expected to be swift surrender was now replaced by a deep sense of uncertainty. When the order to surrender reached the military base, the officers were fully aware of the magnitude of the threat they faced. They had been well informed about the council's power and the ruthless efficiency of their fleets. Yet, despite these threats, they had been preparing for this moment for years. They had continuously reinforced their battle strategies, defense lines, and technological infrastructure. Their confidence remained unshaken. This base was not just a point of defense, but a symbol of humanity's resilience. The officers knew surrender was not an option, and they clung tightly to their honor and beliefs. That's why they left the council's ultimatum unanswered. They chose silence because they knew they would not succumb to the fear their enemies expected. This silence was not a sign of surrender, but a declaration of determination. General Marcus Raylan, the commanding officer of the military base, knew that the moment they had been waiting for had finally arrived. His calmness and unwavering resolve instilled courage in everyone stationed at the base. Gathering his officers, he reminded them that they had always known such an attack would come, and that they had prepared meticulously for this day. "We have been waiting for this day," he said, his voice strong and filled with confidence. "They rely on their advanced technology and numbers, but our greatest strength lies in our faith and unity. Here and now, each of you has a duty to protect the honor of humanity." With General Raylan's clear instructions, the base was abuzz with activity. Defense systems were set to maximum, energy lines in strategic areas were reinforced, and the protective shields around the base were activated. The weapons depots were swiftly checked, and all armories were fully stocked. Soldiers, led by General Raylan, moved with courage and a strong sense of duty. Everyone knew their role and quietly yet resolutely took their positions. From the outside, this wasn't just a military base, it was a fortress sworn to resist. One of the most experienced soldiers at the base, Captain Elias Drayden, was a war veteran who had fought in numerous battles. Despite his wounded body, his spirit remained unbroken, and he was one of the strongest defenders of this resistance. As young soldiers gathered around him, he broke the silence with a powerful voice. "Listen to me," he began. "They're telling us to surrender, but we will not. We have defended these lands, our humanity, and our honor for years, and we will fight with the same courage now. I have seen battles, suffered losses, but I have never been defeated, and today we will not be defeated either. No matter who we face, we are humans, and we will do whatever it takes to defend our freedom. Here, in this base, what is expected of us is not to succumb to fear, but to hold on to our faith and to each other, and to resist Captain Drayden's words planted seeds of courage in the hearts of the young soldiers. His experience and steadfast will reignited the fighting spirit in everyone. The soldiers, who listened to Drayden in silence, understood that surrender was not an option, and they prepared for the battle ahead. The tactical teams gathered in the control room inside the base, meticulously reviewing their plans one last time. The size and technological superiority of the enemy fleets before them were undeniable. However, these teams were well aware of what it meant to face such colossal threats. The enemy's power hadn't intimidated them. Instead, it had sharpened their strategic thinking. Every scenario had been thoroughly analyzed, and a defense plan had been devised for every possible attack. One of the tactical leaders turned to his team, breaking the silence. "They may be strong, but our greatest strength lies in our belief in victory and the trust we have in each other. We've gone over this plan countless times. No matter what happens, the key to victory is in our hands." Everyone in the team exchanged confident glances. Though they were technologically inferior, they knew that with their determination and accumulated knowledge, victory was still possible. There was no doubt that they would execute the plan flawlessly. They believed they were just one step away from victory. General Marcus Rylan assembled all the soldiers in the main courtyard of the base. His voice was stronger and more determined than ever. Stepping forward, he looked into everyone's eyes, conveying his seriousness. "The enemy preparing to attack us is one of the strongest forces history has ever seen. But we know exactly what we're up against. Now it's time to alert the entire world to the true magnitude of this threat. Inform everyone. The war is at our doorstep. But we will not surrender." With Raylan's order, the base came alive. Communication teams immediately contacted other military bases and civilian authorities, sending out warnings. Combat engineers and technical teams activated the defense systems. Laser cannons, missile launchers, and electromagnetic shields were powered up to maximum capacity. Soldiers prepared their weapons in the armories, donned their combat gear, and took their positions. Defense lines were reinforced. Traps and mines were laid around the perimeter of the base. Unmanned aerial vehicles were deployed to track the enemy's approach. Air defense units calculated the enemy fleet's attack trajectory and positioned themselves strategically. Everyone at the base, under Marcus Raylan's leadership, was fully focused on the battle. They were all united under one goal: to resist and to win. After the Intergalactic Council's call for surrender went unanswered, they decided to change tactics. They turned to a harsher and more psychological warfare to force the humans into submission. First, they deployed massive warships in Earth's atmosphere, shrouding the sky in a menacing darkness. This display was intended to intimidate the population and break their will. Then, they launched a series of destructive attacks around the base, with various explosives, creating an atmosphere as if they were ready to launch a full-scale assault at any moment. However, instead of intimidating the humans, these efforts united them. The soldiers and commanders at the base, calm and methodical, activated their defense systems flawlessly. The enemy's unmanned aerial vehicles and assault units were swiftly repelled, and the air defense systems hindered the massive ship's maneuvers. The Council's forces, instead of causing a wave of fear as they had anticipated, only strengthened the resolve of humanity. They were not submitting. On the contrary, they were standing even more firmly against these attempts. Days turned into weeks as the pressure from the Intergalactic Council on humanity continued to intensify. Every day brought a new attack plan, with more powerful ships, drones equipped with advanced weaponry, and psychological warfare tactics designed to break the human spirit. The Council was convinced that they could terrorize humanity into submission by ramping up their onslaught. However, the expected outcome never materialized. Instead of scattering in fear or surrendering, humans banded together. Every attack was repelled, every threat met with a stronger defense. Under the leadership of General Marcus Raylan, the base's soldiers stood their ground, their courage unwavering despite the relentless pressure. No matter how much the Council escalated their efforts, they couldn't break the will of humanity. What they anticipated as an easy victory turned into a prolonged struggle, with resistance far stronger than they had ever imagined. As days passed, despair and frustration began to creep into the ranks of the Council. Leaders who had believed they would crush humanity's resistance quickly were stunned by the unyielding defense they encountered. The more they increased their pressure, the more they thought humans would eventually cave in. But each time, they were repelled as if hitting an impenetrable wall. This string of failures forced the Council into a more radical strategy. Diplomacy and distant strikes were no longer enough. They decided to deploy their elite forces and launch a direct assault on the base. This operation was meant to deliver the final blow. Yet, humanity surprised them once again. General Marcus Raylan and his tactical team had anticipated this move. The base's defenses had been fortified, traps and ambush sites meticulously prepared. Even the Council's most seasoned troops fell into these traps. The elite force's assault was crushed by the strength of human defenses. Once again, humanity repelled the Council's attack, deepening the enemy's despair. In the aftermath of this failed assault, the Council's top commanders convened an emergency meeting. Leaders who had once been so confident in their victory were now bewildered and frustrated. The atmosphere in the room was tense, as they each took turns questioning how they had reached this point. They had underestimated humanity, believing them to be technologically inferior, but the resistance they encountered exceeded all expectations. Some commanders admitted that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating human resilience and strategic acumen. How could we be so ineffective with such a powerful fleet? One commander asked, struggling to conceal his frustration. Others suggested the need for a new strategy, proposing a long-term plan to weaken humanity from within rather than direct combat. However, some advocated for a more radical approach, a full-scale, all-out assault. But this option was risky. As the discussions dragged on, the Council's usual unshakable confidence gave way to uncertainty. They couldn't agree on the next step, but one thing was clear: defeating humanity would not be as easy as they had thought. By the end of the meeting, the Council's patience had worn thin. Despite the lengthy debate, they reached a single conclusion. They would abandon all previous plans and launch a full-scale assault. The commanders, acknowledging that diplomacy and tactical maneuvers had failed, realized that patience was no longer a luxury they could afford. Humanity had shown far greater resilience than expected, but the Council would not allow this resistance to continue. A massive army was mobilized, and every warship was armed with the most powerful weapons systems. The Council, unwilling to take any chances, assembled an unprecedented fleet. Giant warships loomed in the sky, tearing through the darkness as they descended toward Earth's atmosphere. They unleashed a devastating attack, intending to obliterate humanity with their full arsenal, technological superiority, and military might. The skies above the planet were ablaze, and the bombardment of the base was fiercer than ever before. This time, the Council had only one objective: to crush human resistance completely. In response to the Council's full-scale assault, the people activated the traps and deception strategies they had been preparing for a long time. When the attack began, enemy ships bombarded areas they believed were direct targets, while the main points of human resistance had already been hidden and fortified. By creating false targets, humans misled the Council's ships, strategically vacating certain areas to lure them into traps. With each bomb dropped, the Council forces wasted unnecessary energy and ammunition without causing real damage to the base. The defense systems adeptly relocated, while the humans continuously changed their positions, wearing down the Council troops. Additionally, the secret strike teams prepared by the humans infiltrated enemy ships to carry out sabotage from within. As the war dragged on, this guerrilla-style resistance and deception tactics began to slowly exhaust the Council. Contrary to what they expected, the more intense the attack became, the more flexible and agile the human defenses evolved. The Council was expending far more energy and resources than they had anticipated, and they started to realize that victory was not near. Gradually, they began to feel the strain of their own exhaustion. During the most intense moments of the war, the leaders and soldiers of humanity displayed courage far beyond expectations. Without a second thought, they risked their lives, throwing themselves into dangerous missions. They launched direct attacks on enemy ships at strategic points and were ready to make any sacrifice to hold their defensive lines. Their determination amazed not only the Council's soldiers, but also its leaders. The Council commanders oscillated between shock and despair as they watched these seemingly weak people mount such relentless resistance. The fighting spirit and fearlessness of the humans shook even the strongest army in the galaxy. This despair began to transform into anger among the commanders. Overflowing with frustration from their inability to maintain control, Council leaders issued harsh orders. However, this anger had a counterproductive effect on some Council soldiers. Faced with the determination and courage of the humans, soldiers began to hesitate, retreating reluctantly. The strongest army in the galaxy was weakening in the face of this unexpected resistance. The Council commanders were finally beginning to realize that viewing this military base as merely a minor obstacle had been a grave mistake. Despite being technologically inferior, humans had proven at every turn that surrender was not an option. After days of sustained attacks, the commanders saw that the resistance had not faltered. Instead, it grew stronger with each new move. They recognized that this base was not just a defensive point, but humanity's last bastion in their fight for honor and freedom. The stubborn resistance, combined with strategic intelligence and bravery, began to erode all faith the Council had in easily achieving victory. The humans had demonstrated their scale of struggle and determination by rejecting surrender at every opportunity. This military base, which they had considered a minor obstacle, had actually become a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit. The Council commanders could now clearly see the heavy price they had paid for underestimating this situation. The Council was now preparing for its final and most intense assault. They were aware that this attack would result in either victory or a definitive defeat. The commanders accepted that previous tactics had failed and began comprehensive preparations to deploy their full strength this time. Reinforcements were called in from the far corners of the galaxy. The strongest warships, most advanced weapons, and most experienced soldiers were directed to the front lines. They understood that focusing all their resources on this last assault would force them to retreat and accept defeat if they failed. Failure would mean a significant collapse of the Council's prestige and galactic authority. Therefore, all plans were revisited, strategies sharpened, and the attack power doubled. Once all preparations were complete, they launched one final assault against humanity with their massive fleets. This attack would either lead them to certain victory or force them to retreat with a heavy defeat on the battlefield. In response to the Council's final attack, people resisted with more determination than ever. This was the last battle. They would either win or perish. All strategies were put into action. Defense lines were strengthened, and troops fought to the last drop of blood. However, the people were ready to take decisive action to end the war. The critical element of the enemy fleet was the Council's command ship. This aircraft was the center from which the entire war was managed and tactics were determined. The people launched an attack aimed at this aircraft, which would change the course of the war. By directing their advanced technology weapons and entire arsenal at this target, they turned the aircraft into a massive fireball. As the explosion illuminated the sky, fear, astonishment, and deep disappointment appeared in the eyes of the Council leaders. They realized that their years of dominance were about to come to an end with this last move. The fall of their aircraft sealed the fate of the war. In desperation, they understood that nothing would change anymore and gave the order to retreat. Their belief in victory had vanished, and humanity triumphed with this great victory. After their victory, the people quietly celebrated their triumph. Under the weight of exhaustion and losses, they savored their victory with deep inner peace, rather than a grand celebration. Everyone knew that the Council would return one day. This war was merely one phase of a galactic struggle. But for now, they had sent a powerful message across the galaxy. Earth was invincible. Humanity, which refused to bow to the Council's superior power, had asserted its place on the galactic stage, preserving its freedom and dignity. Soldiers and leaders gazed silently at each other, carrying waves of pride within them. This victory was not just a military success. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. The entire galaxy had learned that Earth was now a force to be reckoned with, and the people stood tall with the pride of knowing this truth. The conference room in the Council was enveloped in deep silence following the lost war. Commanders and leaders struggled to understand what set humanity apart from other species in the galaxy. Despite being outnumbered and technologically weaker, their resilience and determination had made them nearly invincible. Council members now recognized that they had made a grave mistake by believing they could win this war solely with superior firepower. They had to admit that weapons, technology, and numerical superiority were not enough against the humans. The resilience, intelligence, and fighting spirit of humanity had sent a message to all species across the galaxy. Humans were invincible. This victory, echoing across the galaxy, was not just a military success. It was proof of the strength of the human spirit and will. The Council leaders had to acknowledge that by winning this war, humanity had proven itself to be a new power in the galactic hierarchy. General Marcus Raylan gathered his soldiers once again after the victory. Pride shone in his eyes, but there was also a serious determination for the future. This victory, Raylan said, is only the beginning. The Council may have retreated today, but they will come back one day. Until then, we must be stronger. We have shown not only Earth, but the entire galaxy humanity's resistance and courage. Here today, we have proven to the galaxy that Earth will never bow down. We are the symbol of resistance. This struggle is not over, but each of us will become even stronger to solidify our victory. Earth is the point of resistance in the galaxy, and we will carry out this mission with determination." The soldiers became even more motivated by Raylan's words. The confidence from their victory surpassed their fatigue and losses. Each of them felt honored to be a part of this struggle, ready to fight with the same determination for every challenge they would face in the future. Under Raylan's leadership, they knew they had not only won a war, but had also shown humanity's will and strength to the entire galaxy. Now, knowing how great their task ahead was, it was time to prepare even more vigorously. General Marcus Raylan looked up at the sky after the victory. Despite the war clouds hanging overhead, there was a bright pride in his eyes. The struggle of humanity had become a symbol of victory echoing in the sky. This victory, resonating in Earth's atmosphere, was not just a win in a battle, it was the triumph of humanity's resilience and will. Raylan took a deep breath, raised his head to the sky, and silently thought, "We are here for the entire galaxy, and we have proven that we will never be defeated." This victory reflected not just the honor of Earth, but of all humanity. The power of humanity was not won with weapons, but with the determination in their hearts. Raylan knew that the courage they displayed would echo in every corner of the galaxy. Now, it was a well-known truth. Earth would never bow down. This thought filled him with great pride as he looked up at the sky and quietly embraced the moment.